Well, my guest for today is Totsie Memela, who's the CEO of Eduloan. And once again, let me tell you, as you know, it's a profile 60-minute interview. So your chance to reminisce. Hopefully you know my guest personally, and if you do, if you are related, if you're family, you sort of get right in the front of the queue. So just call in and say, hey, I've actually gone to school with Totsie. Well, that's fantastic if that is the case. Or we've studied together, or we worked in the same company together. And I can tell you now, Totsie, that's happened more than you believe. You can't believe it. So if you do, also, if you have some anecdotes about just, going to Eduloan and you want to raise some issues regarding, just the company itself, because clearly Totsie Memela are very much defined by where she works in this case here. So if you have some suggestions or questions regarding Eduloan itself, your experiences there, well, also a chance for you to call in. I know we had the same thing when we had the guys from Outsurance a few days ago, in fact. So a lot of calls about interest around Outsurance and where that company all started. So 7 minutes past 8 o'clock. Let's get then to my guest, Totsie Memela. Great of you to join us. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you're a listener to the station as well.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. Good.
And I also found out, by the way, that you listen to the station when you're driving. So I'm impressed. And this program as well.
Yeah. It's always quite interesting to get to understand when you listen to the history about where people come from, where they are, and what space they are, and you see the person holistically and not just as defined by what they do at work.
I completely agree with you. Let's talk about where you are now. You're the CEO of Eduloan, right? Is that right?
Yes, okay. I am the CEO of Eduloan. I've been with the company for just under a year. I will finish a year. In October this year, I'll be finishing a year with the company.
Okay, now let me say this, my experience of Eduloan, what I know, and I may be wrong, is like it's either yourself or you have children who haven't paid their varsity fees and say like, what must I do? So, well, you can always go to Eduloan. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, Eduloan? Definitely. Our focus is nothing else but education. We don't do any other loans other than for education.
That's what I said yesterday. I said most varsity students should know you very well, I would think.
Actually, you'd be surprised. It's actually most people that are working for employers that see education as an important enabler for their employees.
So an ongoing process. So as opposed to sort of first-time students.
Yes, it's not only first-time students. It's also those people that over the years, over the 16 years that we've existed, we've actually provided a lot of finance towards teachers, nurses, or all the people in medical environment, the people in your security field, which is teacher, which would be your police, and people in your defense force, and also on the medical field.
So in that case, it tells you that my personal views are very narrow in terms of what I understand. It's far more broader, right?
Yes.
What sort of impact has it had? Because I would like to think then that, we had a chat about entrepreneurship earlier on, that the biggest stumbling block to entrepreneurship is, like for most people, it's funding. Many people say the biggest stumbling block to further education is just funding, and it's getting the money to pay for your loans, isn't it?
I think as a country we're in a very interesting space when one look at the amount of funding that government has provided, particularly for poor people, those people that are in lower LSMs and cannot on their own actually access funding, which is one space. We sit in a very different space. We provide finance for those people that are not poor enough to access government funding, but also not rich enough in many instances to access bank loans. So we would engage with employers and enable the employers to enable those their staff members to access loans, either for them to improve their own lives by going to school, but also for them to be able to pay for their children, because then it makes it easy. Because our loans are not loans that you pay at the end of completing your degree, but you would pay for the loan whilst you're actually studying
on an ongoing basis.
On an ongoing basis.
So if it's not the poorest and not the richest, you represent the majority then. I would like to think.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting niche, because it would be those people that are in your LSM between 2 and 7 in terms of what you call LSM. So it is the majority of the people, because again, like I was saying, that government has to a large extent provided the loans for those people that are poor. But I think we need more than just access to finance when we look at where we are as a country in terms of our education system, because you may find that sometimes you have money to go to school or to university, but if you don't have a support structure, you may find that still you don't succeed. when you look at what has happened with the loans that government has given, for example, and you find that people go and do their first year, and that's where the drop-off is likely to impact. It therefore means that even though the money is there, but if people don't have a support structure, they are not going to pass. Therefore, you are actually wasting the money also.
And Eduloan itself in existence for how long?
We've been in existence for 16 years now, and over the past 16 years, we've given up to 660,000 loans.
Individual loans, not in money terms.
No,
right,
not in money. Individual loans, and to the value of 2.7 million rands over the past 16 years. It's actually quite interesting how the company got formed. It was formed by two entrepreneurs. Interestingly, earlier on, you were talking to an entrepreneur, and their initial niche was actually providing education material. But what they then found, particularly for teachers, what they then found was that the teachers did not have money to finance themselves, and they then started providing loans.
So it was centered to teachers.
Yes,
initially.
That was the initial.
And now, I mean, is it a private company?
It is a private company. It has always been a private company, and even though initially when it started, it was formed by these two entrepreneurs. Over time, they then required funding, and now it's owned by a whole range of stakeholders. The stakeholders currently include Standard Bank together with Circle Capital. SASFIN also is one of the shareholders in the company, and Kopana Investment in partnership with Future Growth. So it's a wide range of people that own it. Over the years, what we've recognized is that since we want to grow as a company, we then needed to make sure that we expand the number of people that actually can invest in the company, including those public companies that want to impact on education. And recently, we put together a debenture program whereby we've had the likes of the PIC and also, again, Future Growth also investing in the debenture program, so that we can be able to come up with other creative programs, which may not only be those programs whereby people only get a loan for a year. And we've also recognized that education is much broader than just higher education. We should be able to impact on people from when they start school, because the foundation phase is the most important phase. We should not start worrying about matriculants and what happens at university, but at foundation phase. So in future, we'll have programs, also products whereby we'll fund education tools. Will also be able to fund even when people are starting at basic or foundation phase.
Let me invite you to join us. 0891 104 207, 0891 104 207. If you wish to chat to Totsie Memela Kambula, maybe apply for a loan online. Let's see how that works out for you. But on a very serious note, of course, she's the CEO of Eduloan. If you want to, if you know her, if you in any way you sort of cross paths, and there's some anecdotes you'd like to share about her and maybe the company itself, Eduloan, considering she's been there since day one, well, that's absolutely fine as well. If you want some advice, that's fine, but also advice in terms of her role as a CEO of not just Eduloan, but a company, and the type of again, the type of template that you would want to follow if you want to follow that sort of path. I mean, this is practical advice that you get a chance to do, just that as we spend 60 minutes chatting then to Totsie Memela Kambula, the CEO of Eduloan. That SMS number, of course, is 34701. 34701. Right, 15 minutes past 8. I'm very interested to know that strategically Eduloan has positioned itself, and when I say position in terms of not in a marketing term, but in physical terms, virtually every single varsity right exactly where they are. And I always found that in my little bit of assessment gave them a strategic advantage. Because, of course, there are banks there, but I think in terms of the branding, even students would almost feel that they'll be better received by the Eduloans rather than these banks that don't really speak to them.
And again, it's because our focus is education and nothing else. Hence, we have over the years made sure that we provide support to the university that we may be serving, not only to students that come through there, but also the employees of universities. They also have access to the loans that we provide, because in most instances, when you work in an academic environment, you'd also want to continue to improve yourself and improve your life. So we serve not just the students that come through, but we also serve the university staff that may be working in those particular universities. And it's over the past 16 years that we've always continued to have a presence in the universities, and we've added in terms of the number of campuses depending on where the need is, and in most instances would engage with the universities, and they would tell us what their requirements are, and if they say we need to be our opening needs to be for X number of hours, would make sure that we align with the presence, with what the requirements are at that particular institution.
Okay, just some comments not related to you about fuel available at Engine service station in Umlazi, Durban, next to the Umlazi police station, because I believe it's sort of spread now to that area as well. So there you are. No petrol in Zambezi Drive in Pretoria. Goodness, I hope you get sorted out as well. And something directed to you from Jerome saying, Ashraf, I salute Totsie for her role in Operation Vula. So there you are. Wow. So there you are. It comes from all different areas. Maybe it's a good time to start talking about that. You know, where did it all start for you?
When it comes to that life, and thank you very much about that part of my life, which was quite an interesting life. That it started when I was studying at Diepkloof Junior Secondary. At the time, it was called Diepkloof Junior. It's now called Bupasnatla, which is quite an interesting name. I, at the time, was not politically involved, and I did not come from a family that was politically involved per se, except for or whatever struggles that most people had gone through. And I was then nominated by the student body to be a representative just before June 76, when the uprisings actually started. And it was more just an open nomination, not that I thought at the time that I had any leadership qualities. We were then nominated as three of us to go and represent the students of Diepkloof, but it was subsequent to the initial June 76, because the other secondary schools actually joined in that particular struggle at the time much later. The initial area that started was more your Orlando West area, where it's
and this is from June 16th or even before that?
That is after that. After June 16. So we then started engaging and going to meetings, trying to decide as to whether we needed to continue after the June 16 uprising had started. And that's when the Diepkloof area really started getting involved. And it was quite interesting because at the time I had not been politically involved, and I wasn't sure what it was that I was getting involved in. And having to come back with the mandate from the collective, which would be the committee that would decide on what is the next phase in terms of that particular struggle, and trying to galvanize the students within our own environment to make sure that we do what we believed what was the right thing at the time, and also making sure that the parents, because during that time you had to make sure that the adults didn't know what we were all about, and making sure that so the first part was more having to convince the student body in Bupasnatla that we shouldn't write exams in 1976, and with other people feeling very strongly that they needed to write, yet having to give people space that if they wanted to write, they can go ahead. But as a leader, you couldn't then go contrary to the very things that you were.
So you didn't write?
I didn't write exams. As a result, in 1976, I didn't get my JC. That's why I subsequently left in 1977, and then I left. I left actually initially legally, and went to Swaziland. And the main objective is, at the time, my mother had always told us that education is one thing that will take one out of poverty. So I had always wanted to make sure that I go to school, however difficult it was. So when I went to Swaziland, it was more to look for educational opportunities, and that's when we met as a whole lot of other students, and would sit at the library in Swaziland and talk to each other to find out who's going where.
And these are South African students?
These were South African students.
Was this at Waterford? Which school did you go to?
No, I wish I could have afforded to go to Waterford. We couldn't afford.
Just checking.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I actually went to school through correspondence, like what they would call a damelin here, It was Memela Latini, which was a correspondence college. I was actually taught English by Lindiwe Sisulu. She used to teach English
Wow.
in that school. Yes, there were a number of South Africans that used to teach in that school, because it was not formal, but during school holidays, people that were teaching in other areas would come and teach us in that environment. So I studied through correspondence, which therefore means, because my parents just did not have money to take me to the formal schools that were still accepting South Africans, because many of the schools at the time in Swaziland would not accept South Africans because they said we were troublemakers.
Okay.
So, particularly those that were reasonable schools, which were government schools, but the other private schools still did. But I just could not afford to go to those particular schools, and studied through Mlalatini for about 3 years, and then subsequently went to university. It was an interesting time, and I suppose when you're young, you always think that I look at my kids now, and I look at them, and they think they know it all. I think, my goodness, this is how I was.
You'll see, indeed, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All right, lots more we're going to talk about, indeed, to Totsie Memela Kambula, the CEO of Eduloan, in 60 minutes. With Totsie Memela Kambula. Once again, make a note of the number 0891 104 207, and I'll pick up some of the SMSs once again on 34701. 34701.
The Talk Shop.
Right, 24 past 8. I see Ben in Yoba wanted to talk. Now, Ben's gone for a second. Okay, Ben, if you want to talk again, please call back 0891 104 207. We're chatting to Totsie Memela Kambula. I want to talk lots more about that class of 76, but I want to pick up an SMS from one of our listeners, which I think is very relevant in terms of a theme that we often touch on in this country. And the listener is saying, this is Yannick. What about refugee student registered in a university like myself? That's not a specific question, but I think the implication is, do you assist refugee students? That's what I think.
Again, as I indicated earlier on, is that in terms of what we provide is not necessarily bursaries, but it's loans. So if a refugee has a parent who's already working, yes, we can be able to provide support. But if there's nobody that's employed, it becomes a bit of a challenge.
So the difference is you need to have proof that the person will be able to pay back.
Yes, to pay back.
Unlike a
yes.
bursary.
And I'm not sure what the case is in South Africa, because I remember when we were refugees, we used to find a number of programs that were funding refugees. When I was in Swaziland, for example, for my junior degree, I got funding from the United Nations at the time. That's how I did my junior degree. And when I did my postgraduate, which was in Zimbabwe, I was actually funded there also by World University Service. So in most cases, you would find that there are special programs that are provided by international organizations to support refugees. But I don't know what the case is currently. I suppose one has not investigated.
All right, let's get to the callers. So 0891 104 207, 0891 104 207. Ben in Yeovil. Let's get to 26 minutes past 8. Ben in Yeovil, hi.
Hello, Ashraf. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for taking my call, and good evening to a guest.
Good
To
evening.
begin with, Ashraf, I would like to know from your guest there. Basically, I attempted to lend money from them January this year to help my child get results. That was just about 1,007, and I was declined because I was told I am blacklisted. And I asked who blacklisted me, because I don't remember owing any institution. So they also never disclosed. Now, the thing is that they took my photocopy, the photocopy of my ID, and I demanded it back. Can I get it back? Because now I don't know what you are going to do with it, since there is this blacklisting issues and people take other people's IDs and do whatever they would like.
Okay, so wait, you're saying you never got money, you were blacklisted, but they've got a copy of it. They don't have the original, they've got the copy of the ID, and you're scared they're going to use the copy of the ID.
Yes, I wanted my copy. I did have the original ID. So I made a photocopy.
I understand. Let's get it over
to them.
Ben, stay on the line. Let's get a response. Hold on, okay? Right, okay.
All right, sure.
Yeah, Ben, you can get the copy of your ID back. I will take your details and we'll make sure that you get that back. On the issue of people that are blacklisted, I don't know if you are aware, but we have what we call the National Credit Act, which defines what we can or cannot do, because we also have a responsibility of making sure that we don't over-indebt people. Let's just assume that you're not over-indebted. There are programs that are always run in terms of where do people go if they want to know what their status is in terms of your credit exposure. It becomes very important for all of us to make sure that we can go to the credit bureau whenever we're told that we are blacklisted.
Who should somebody go? Because sometimes people go after the event, right? But you're saying they could actually go before the event.
You can go
I
even.
could just call myself today and find out exactly what
Yes,
it is.
everybody's entitled to know what their exposure is, so you can go to the credit bureau and request for.
So I hate to interrupt, but where is that credit bureau? Because I looked for the numbers of the people who deal with that. I was given certain numbers of certain guys in Braamfontein. I went there. The building was not even there. Their offices weren't there. So where exactly can I go?
I don't have the information at hand, but we can get the information for you in terms of what the which credit bureau you can go to, because the likelihood is that the people whose name they gave you must be the people that have listed you, not necessarily the credit bureau. But all of us are entitled to getting an understanding of what the records are in terms of who are the people that have listed us, if we are listed at all. What I will do is I will get the information and make sure that the station has got access to that information, and you can get it through from there. But failing which, you can call us. You can call Eduloan tomorrow, or if I've got your details, I can make sure that we call you back so that we can advise as to where you can go to get that information.
So I think just take my details, because your people, if I call there, they don't even answer phones.
Okay, we're going to help you. Ben, Tali, my right-hand man has already taken your details, right? So is that correct? He's going to pass it on to Totsie just after the show. All right?
Oh, okay.
Ben, thanks for the call, and we appreciate your concern, and let's see if we can help you out. All right?
Sure.
Right. Yeah. It's 8:30. We're spending 60 minutes chatting with Totsie Memela the CEO of Eduloan. I mean, you often get, and those are obviously he doesn't understand that again. It's not a bursary; it's a loan in effect. Yeah. Let's talk about, well, there's an SMS I want to pick up on, because I think it's relevant to you before I get to Billy. Let's just pick up on that SMS. If I can just get to that SMS just quickly, because I think it comes from Peter Paul. Peter Paul says, Totsie is a valued member of a board I chair, and you know exactly who it is.
Yes.
Is that the Peter Paul who was involved with the Robben Island?
Yes, it is.
Peter should call in, because I know Peter. Peter, you should be calling in, man.
It is. He's the chair of a very interesting and exciting institution that we together serve in, and it's been an honor and privilege for me to serve on.
Good. Well, Peter, I challenge you to call in and share one really good anecdote about Totsie Memela. It'll be really interesting indeed if you can do just that. And that number once again, 0891 104 207. But thanks for that SMS anyway. Billy in Cape Town. Hi, Billy.
Ashraf.
Yep.
First of all, your previous caller, to take him out of his misery,
yeah,
he can phone the largest credit bureau, TransUnion ITC, at 0861 492 492.
Okay, let me just repeat it. But of course, we will get it to him as well. But 0861
492
492 492.
I don't work there, but I do deal with those things quite a bit. Anyway, Totsie Memela, if I recall, used to work for Land Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And she had quite a senior position there. I don't know whether that much personal, but my previous boss, Mrs. Vanity Klein, would know Totsie fairly well. All I can say, it appears that whatever she touches turns into gold, and she's very effective at what she does. Congratulations, keep it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that's very nice. Thanks for that, Billy. Billy's gone, okay, but he's made the point. Let's talk about, because somebody else also Facebook to say, well, please talk about Land Bank, but not in complimentary terms, referring to as a big disaster there. Your experiences at Land Bank?
I must say that I was fortunate that I went to the Land Bank at a very interesting time when the transformation process was just starting at the bank, and I was there from 1998, so it's ages ago. And I worked under the leadership of Helena Dolney at the time. Derek Hanekom was the minister and Togo Didiza was the deputy minister. So it was quite interesting for us because I didn't know much about agriculture when I first went to the land bank, but I had been working in a banking environment, so I understood banking in broad terms, but not agriculture, and learned quite a lot at the time. And it was the first time that we started enabling people of color to have access, like black farmers, to have access to loans. And we started a whole lot of interesting initiatives where we started a program that was called the Step Up program, whereby we gave small farmers small loans, whereby would give you a small loan for 500 rands. Once you paid it back, you'd then move up the steps, and seeing as to what that actually did in terms of enabling people that's in some instances that did not have a credit record, for them to begin to develop their credit record, and having analyzed that and seen as to what the potential was for those, particularly women, in terms of the performance of what would happen. Because in many instances we always think that people don't require only access to loans, but you see that if you don't have a credit record, you can start small and build up that. And it was nice to see the performance with regards to women. Women in many instances actually pay back their loans. And I think it's again because they know that in many instances they don't have those opportunities where they would have access to loans. And once they do have the access, they make sure that they perform because they know how it would impact on their children and impact on their families. So it was quite an interesting time in our lives. And for me, I learned in leaps and bounds in terms of development finance, but also agricultural finance. At the time when we started, we didn't do commercial agriculture, and we started some of those processes, helped transform the institution, not only in terms of the business that we were doing, but also transformed the people. When previously, I mean, I can remember walking through those passages initially when we started at the land bank, where all you could see on the passages were white faces, and it was nice to see the change. Not only in terms of the people that were leading the institution, but also the change in terms of everybody understanding that this land bank is our land bank, not the land bank for an yes. So it was quite exciting.
All right, I want to get to, somebody's asked a question about who owns Eduloan again. He wants specifics, but we'll get to that in a moment. 0891 104 207, 60 minutes chatting to Totsie Memela Kambula, the CEO of Eduloan. Your questions, your comments, your anecdotes, your congratulatory messages, your hi, I was in school with you, remember me call, any of those sorts, all welcome. Pila in KwaZulu-Natal, hi.
Hello.
Yeah, thanks for calling.
Yes, thanks. I'm having a question here. Like, there are students whom you find that they are academically deserving, like maybe in their first day they get an average of around 60%, and they will find that they can't afford, education, and they are on the course. And maybe their parents are not working, maybe there's no one whom they can depend on. And they find that the NSFAS loan, maybe they can't access the NSFAS loan. I'm just asking, isn't maybe a good idea that maybe Eduloan can find those students and then they repay the amount after they've graduated?
Wait, what are you saying? These are people who want a loan, but they can't access a loan?
Maybe they can't access the NSFAS loan, and maybe they are just so unfortunate in not getting the bursaries.
Right. Let me get my guest to answer. Stay on the line. Just stay on the line for now, right?
Oh, okay.
I think that in terms of what you've defined, ordinarily those types of students should be able to access a NSFAS loan. And I know that NSFAS is currently working on a number of processes to make sure that not only should people go to universities, but can also go to them, because in terms of what you've defined, if you've got the ability to pass, and you've got the especially if you've already passed a first year, there's no reason why you should not be able to get a NSFAS loan. But in some instances, depending on what program you're on, there are also bursaries that people can find where you can get financing from institutions. I agree with you that in many...
Yeah, yes.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Yes, like the example is just me. Like, I've been doing civil engineering at UNISA, I got an average of 50%. I've been applying for bursaries, but I didn't get some funding. I also applied for NAFSA's loan, but they said the funds were all finished up.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not studying this year. I didn't get the funds at the beginning of the year. So I went to Eduloan, and they said, like, you need to be employed, like, so that you can start repaying during the course of the year. And I couldn't. I wasn't able to study.
We are currently looking at what it is that we can do in terms of alternative products, particularly for those people who are doing programs that are in areas which are in scarce and critical skills for the country, because in many instances, if you are in a critical area, you find that it's not difficult for you to find a job when you've completed. It's just that in terms of our current model, we are not able to serve that. But I suppose what I will do is I'll make sure that Tali has got your contact details so that we can also see as to whether we can help support you, even if it's also linking up with other institutions to see how we can facilitate.
All right. Is that okay with you, Pilar?
Yes, that's okay. Thank you.
All right.
much.
Thanks for your call and just asking the questions as well. Appreciate it. Right. So 20 minutes to 9. If you still want to ask any further questions to Totsie Memela Kambula, that's absolutely fine with us. Don't forget as well your suggestions in terms of who we should be talking to on the show, 60 minutes with. Just email me to Ashraf at safm.co.za. And by the way, tomorrow, of course, on AM Live, lots of response regarding the Public Protector's findings, but she'll be a guest with Siki from 9 o'clock. So the Public Protector, 9 o'clock. I think 9 to 10, in fact. Don't miss that one there on the morning talk as well. Let's talk about, so okay, very, very quickly in terms of your life, and maybe sort of, I don't want to run through it for a long time, but just in maybe 2 minutes, from Swaziland to what? Okay. Just very quickly.
From Swaziland, I left Swaziland and went to Zimbabwe after it had become a security risk to continue to stay in Swaziland, because at the time there were some of the security forces within the Swaziland environment that were working with the South African regime. I then left. I went to Lusaka, from Lusaka through to Cuba, went for training. There was a colleague or comrade of mine at the time that used to call me a kid soldier. So I was clear that when I finished my degree, I'm going to go and do proper training. Went to Cuba. From Cuba, I went back to Zambia. Then was at the time deployed to Zimbabwe. Went to work in Zimbabwe under Operation Vula, and then I came back. When I came back home, I started working at the PEM, worked at the PEM for a number of years. From the PEM, I left. I went to, the PEM was then during going through a transition at the time when it was bought by Netco, the Netco group. Left there, went to the Land Bank. From the Land Bank, I went to the Netco group, which became the Netco group at the time. Land Bank. From Land Bank, I then went to FNB, came back to the private sector, went to FNB. From FNB, I went back to the public sector. I went to the post office, had an awesome
so you're
time.
out to serve, right?
Yeah, and then now I'm with Eduloan and serving there and having an interesting period in terms of even where we are in terms of the family. I have a big family, married to a wonderful, wonderful man that's extremely supportive in terms of my career. But also we have 6 children between us. One of the kids is a child that we took from a children's home a few years ago, and she's given us nothing but joy with the rest of the kids growing up, and we're facing all the challenges that parents and excitements that parents
you can say ditto
through,
to all of that. Just tell me about your without getting into the detail, because we've spoken to many other people about it before, but just the experience of being in exile and then sort of being seen as an activist of sorts, right? To what degree did that harden you, but also, when I say harden in a positive sense, but also discipline you in a way that South Africans who sort of remain in this country cannot understand? I mean, there's a special lesson that you've learned in life, and these trials and tribulations have actually, in fact, instead of weakened you, they've actually set you up to be a far, far stronger person.
I think the first thing that I learned was, for you to be a strong commander, you need to have greater lieutenants. You need to work with people that are smarter than you, because then they will make you shine. They actually make you succeed. So I try to ensure that when I select team members, I select people that are different from me in terms of experience, but also in terms of I'm beginning to have a bit of a challenge because I tend to focus too much on the gender side, and I'm beginning to see that my team has got too many women and need to balance that. But also to try and make sure that even in terms of skill sets, I look for people that don't have the skill set that I am, even in terms of personality and temperament, because then it will create a balance. So for me, that's one thing that I learned throughout that period, is to make sure that you surround yourself with good people. I think the other key thing that I think I learned is the issue of trust, because you knew that you had to trust the comrades that you work with, because if you didn't have that, you didn't have anything else. And it's interesting, I was just looking at my current profile now, and that comes across very strongly. But again, with the understanding that you will, in certain instances, get disappointments. Sometimes you'd be working with people and you hear that, no, actually that person is working for the security forces. So you knew that it would happen, but if it does happen, it happens. But you couldn't go into a relationship of comrades that you work with without trusting that they are part of what you believe, what you are part of, because then it would make it very difficult for you to work with anybody. The other thing that I think I learned, there was, I had an interesting commander, Archie Abrahams, that taught me that it didn't matter what it is that you were involved in. You needed to make sure that the words that Archie would use would be, Maburu Harubali, the boys don't sleep. You need to make sure that you succeed in terms of your education, but you still succeed in terms of making sure that you do your underground work properly. It doesn't mean that you couldn't make an excuse and say, no, I had been away, was doing movement work, therefore I need to fail. It was also not acceptable.
Which many people have used those excuses anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So you had to make sure that even though you were doing underground work, you still had to make sure that you pass, you succeed in whatever else you do. So and I think it continues to create a bit of a challenge for me, because I think in that regard sometimes one wants to try and be a super person, and you can never be.
You just can't. Yeah. Well, I'm going to change tack and sort of get into some other personal issues for now. But I believe in terms of music, you're a fan of Ella Fitzgerald.
Yes, I love Ella.
Why do you like her?
I think in terms of the time that I got exposed to Ella's music, it was when we're still growing up, and I had a brother, he's still alive, Budvus, that used to play Ella's music, and he used to play a lot of jazz at home. So that's how I got exposed to Ella Fitzgerald. And in terms of the current the South African musicians, the one person whose music I really, really, really enjoy is Judith Sipuma's music. Particularly, there's one particular song of hers that sometimes brings tears in my eyes when I listen to where she sings about a parent. I suppose not having parents anymore, I would think I would listen to how she. And
you can relate to that.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
And in terms of Ella Fitzgerald, is there any particular songs that stick out, or the many?
No, there's nothing that sticks out immediately. But they interestingly, my twin sister and myself have been exposed recently to music that my husband has been listening to, with his music of Yane, which is quite a combination of it's not quite classic, it's classic with jazz, and it's just awesome.
Well, you speak about that sort of music with tremendous passion. I tell you what, just for now, we're gonna play some Ella Fitzgerald, and I thought rather appropriately, since you had to leave, skip 1976 school year and then move to Swaziland. At that stage, maybe your life was not very, very clear in terms of where you're going to land up. Maybe the song Misty is rather appropriate. Yeah, it's come to 10 minutes to 9. We are chatting to Totsie Memela, the CEO of Eduloan. Did you enjoy that? Misty from Ella Fitzgerald.
Yes, thank you very much. That was great.
Well, thank Tali, who put it all together, I can tell you now. Let's get to a caller from Kranskop in Konzo. Good evening, hi.
Hey, Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, good, man.
Good, man. And I'm also greetings to ma'am there. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm having a question here. Is this loans specifically to those who are in the universities, or even those who are in the FET colleges are also accommodated?
We do accommodate people in FET colleges, but it would mean that it would have to be a debit order loan and not a loan that is directly through your salary, even if you are employed or your parents are employed. So we do provide loans also for people in FET colleges.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Is that, are you okay with that answer? You want to ask a follow-up question, maybe?
No, I'm satisfied. It's okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Thanks for that call there. Right. Because, by the way, I believe Christina Scott doing mental health. I know Science Matters, but I heard Sister is doing something on mental health. We'll sort of follow that up, which comes up from 9 o'clock. So we'll get clarity on that there. Let's talk about people who've inspired you in your life. Then, who's inspired you? Who's your childhood hero?
Actually, interestingly, many people that are my childhood heroes are people that were in our community. For example, Dr. Motlane.
Mm-hmm.
For us,
Ntate
Motlane. For us, he was one of those doctors that we knew that, if you want to be a doctor, we couldn't relate to anybody else because it was a field that not many of our people went through. But the other person that inspired me is I was thinking about her the other day. We're talking about her. I went to Holy Cross, and she was because in the Roman Catholic schools we called our teachers in their first names. Mm-hmm. So she was Teacher Shadi, and I don't know what has happened to her. Mm-hmm. But also there was another teacher which was we called her Teacher Grace. Those were my teachers. But also the other teacher that inspired me. When I was in Diepkloof Junior Secondary, which is Bopa Snatla, was Teacher Mhlambi, and I'm hoping that he's still alive. He was a science teacher that was really a very strong science teacher that helped many of us go through our JC at the time. So it's mostly my teachers that are. When people talk about role models, I can imagine only teachers, nurses, and doctors that were serving in our communities at that time.
Absolutely.
Hence, I find it sad that our children only see the people that are role models as people that are musicians and people that are stars. They cannot relate.
So why was teaching or teachers in this case so important to you? I mean, could you understand even at that young age that a teacher was important rather than the musician?
I suppose we were not exposed to many pop stars because at the time there weren't many black pop stars, so we
there was no television, of course.
And there was no television unless you listened to radio. So the people that we could look up to were people that were professionals, and again the professionals were. I mean, I remember there was one nest that was on our street, and to see them wearing their white shoes and with their crisp white clothes, and those were the people that you looked up to and hoped that as you grew up you could become like them, and definitely not bus drivers but nurses and teachers.
And now, who's your hero right now in the present tense?
I think in the present tense, the one person that I really, really look up to is Professor Johnson, who's
Jonathan Johnson.
Yeah, Jonathan Johnson. I think I look upon him as a leader in terms of what he's doing in his community, and the community that I'm referring to is the university. But the fact that he's forcing us to debate issues that,
and he's misunderstood because of that.
And I think because of that he's misunderstood, and he's not necessarily a populist, but he's doing what his conscience tells him is the right thing in terms of the space that he occupies. But the other thing that I find quite fascinating about him is how he's reaching out to his community, which is the students that he serves at the university. And I mean, he between 7 and 8 every time his students have got access to him, and he's using also the social network interestingly in terms of talking to his students, making them think and forcing them to think, because I think that's one thing that we've stopped doing in terms of making sure that we push ourselves to think about the what if. We tend to go with whatever the mainstream idea is, and in many instances we're actually too scared to ask the what ifs, and if we do ask the what ifs, we ask them in our dinner tables, and we don't put things that we think about out there in the public, and he does, and I find him absolutely fascinating.
So are you an operator, social networking operator?
Not really. I mean, I am on the network. I'm not on Facebook, but there's a group of women that I've worked with for the past 11 years. So we always connect and we support each other, because I think that's one thing that you really do need.